am your guest host, Carl Jackson, sitting in for the Officer Tatum. Are you worthy of the sacrifice? It's been 80 years since our troops stormed the beaches of Normandy to take on the Nazi fascists and kick some booty, but they did so obviously at great risk and a lot of deaths. And every time I think of not just situations like Normandy, but troops that have gone and died before us. Recently, I went to a Memorial Day ceremony, I should say, at a local cemetery near my house, and man, it was amazing because I sat there and I just walked by all of these crosses, and I looked at all of these faces, these young faces, and these were soldiers that had died. Obviously, I'm not speaking of Normandy right now, but these are the soldiers that had died post 9/11. And they were soldiers, they were Floridians that had made the ultimate sacrifice. And here I was at a local cemetery that was right near me. I had no idea that it existed. And there were cross after cross after cross, and they were lined up. And the people were so young, so many that were 18, 19, 20, 21. There were some that were 28. I saw a couple that were over 40. I think one was 56 that I saw. It literally walked from cross to cross to cross. And you have no idea the sacrifice that people made for your freedom. And so I would challenge you and I ask you, are you worthy of the sacrifice? And the truth is, the answer is yes, because they wouldn't have sacrificed their lives for you. But what you have to do in order to show that you honor, in order to show that you appreciate the sacrifice that they made for you, whether it's the soldiers, some that are still alive. One gentleman died 102 years old, headed back to Normandy, and he died. We have to continue to fight for this country. We don't have to fight like they fought. But we have to make sure that we get out and vote. We have to make sure that we're positive about this country and that we talk about liberty, not just in a bubble, not just in a vacuum. Be willing to share it with friends. Be willing to share it with neighbors. Be willing to tell people why you love this country. If you're Christian, be willing to. There's a lot of Christians that, for whatever reason, don't realize how blessed they are to live in the United States of America compared to other countries. I believe that's how you show appreciation for the men and women that have gone before us and died. But particularly when I think of the greatest generation, I heard someone else say this today, so it isn't my own thinking, but one of the reasons why World War II was such it's such an amazing, obviously it was devastating, but it's such an amazing point in time in history is because the lines were clearly drawn. There was no ambiguity whatsoever. You knew who the allies were. You knew who the enemies were. You knew what evil was. And then today you have a person like Joe Biden, who we'll get to in just a sec, that is absolutely and utterly confused, that doesn't seem to know who the enemies are and who our allies are, as he degrades Israel at times, as he degrades fellow Americans at times, even in France, which is absolutely astonishing. But when I consider the sacrifices that our soldiers have made, whether it was on D-Day, whether it was during Vietnam, whether it was the North Korean War, whether it was post 9/11, I try to think to myself, am I worthy of that sacrifice? What am I going to do to make sure that I honor their deaths? And one of the ways that I see fit to do it is to make sure that we continue to live and to fight for the liberty that those people provided. Again, going back to this cemetery, it's a small town in Orlando called Oviedo, and I mean, killed in action, killed in action, killed in action, killed in action, killed in action. That's all I was seeing. And then there were some that happened to die while they were in active duty. You know, maybe it was training, whatever the situation was. Probably 5% or so of the crosses were people that just happened to die, soldiers that died, while they were on active duty, but not necessarily in combat. which doesn't necessarily, I don't know. They probably would have gone on to die a hero, or maybe not. I don't know. But so many that were killed in action, and I just looked at these young people and these young faces, and I almost felt guilty, because there was a period of time that I was going to join the military, but I was such a knucklehead. I was just hard-headed, just rebellious. And I literally signed up to go to the Army with a buddy of mine. He ended up going. I didn't go, but he ended up going to the Air Force. But I was such a knucklehead, and I was sitting there, and I don't know what I watched. I watched some military movie, and I just sat there and thought, man, if one of these guys talks to me like that, I don't know if I could take it. I think I'm going to do something stupid. And so I didn't go. And then so I ended up serving time in another government institution called jail. It wasn't the military. But one of the dumbest mistakes that I believe that I made. But every time I look, whether thinking of these troops, looking at old World War II specials, reading about them, the sacrifice that our troops made, particularly during that time where young men were literally lying about their age to go fight the Nazis in Germany. We knew what evil was. And now today you can look at some college campuses, or we saw some college campuses. There was some nonsense on one, I believe, just this week, as a matter of fact, which is kind of strange to me. But nonetheless, now we're inviting evil. Now we glorify evil. These men fought against it. So how do we honor them? We make sure that we stand against the things that they fought against, that we fight against the real fascism that we see, the authoritarianism that we see popping up in the Biden administration. And I'm going to go through. So I don't do this a lot because I can't stand the rah in politics all the time. But I want you to understand what we're up against. I know this isn't going to necessarily persuade independents or libertarians per se, but I do want to go through some of the Trump persecution. I really think that it's important, guys, because I do believe that if we don't have the rule of law in America, we have absolutely nothing inside of the United States of America. It is all for naught. And so I want to make sure that we go through that. I want to go through Biden's feckless or completely empty executive order on the border. It actually does absolutely, I take that back. I was going to say that it does absolutely nothing when it comes to the border. It does do something. It actually makes the problem worse. I'll explain to you how Biden has actually, if anything else, he's made the problem on the border much worse. So buckle up, Buttercup, because nothing is going to slow down on the border. If anything, he has kind of issued a fast pass, like hurry up, and not necessarily him, because if you saw any other video I posted on my X account today, you can see that Biden isn't there. He is not running the country. We'll talk about this Wall Street Journal piece. Daily Wire did a summary on it. I want to make sure that we go through that, but I want you to understand what we're up against. Everything that And I have to be careful here, right? Because I don't want to be hyperbolic. But when I think about what the soldiers fought against, that was so clear to every American, the soldiers in D-Day, and when they hit that beach in Normandy, France, I feel like what they fought against there in France, we're fighting against here, but in a different way and amongst each other, because we've embraced some of our enemies' beliefs. And I think this is so important. I think we're at a unique moment in time in history. I know there's VP stakes or whatever, or we'll get into that a little bit. But I got to tell you, I'm gonna just be frank with you. I don't know how else to be honest. I'm a little tired of the VP stakes. I don't think it makes a difference whatsoever. I'm getting a little annoyed with conservatives that are hyping it up more than they are you going out and making sure that you secure your own territory, your own community, down ballot races. Democrats are focusing heavily on down ballot races regardless of what happens with the White House race. I almost believe that they've come to a point where they believe that Joe Biden might lose, and so they're trying their best to make sure that they can keep the Senate, perhaps gain seats in the House. I don't think that's going to necessarily happen because of the windfall that President Trump had after the conviction, and we'll get into that, but that's what's going on. I can tell you, based upon every single one of these VP candidates that I see, and I like a couple of them, I really do like a couple of them, they're not going to make a damn bit of difference when it comes to the election. I don't care what any conservative says.